we get straight into it, I guess?
I think being professional is being good at your job.
When your job goes, you're literally left with nothing.
Welcome to Bridge the Gap, a show where we aim to build a bridge of understanding between opposing views. Each episode, you'll see our participants sit down to discuss some thought-provoking statements.
I know what it feels like to be completely broke.
If they disagree with the statement, they'll leave their seat and allow those that agree to explain themselves.
Uni life, that was absolutely outrageous. Who even cares? We're all broke together.
Those that disagree then return and express themselves to the rest of the group.
Oh, this one. And
You feel like our account's a remix?
remix, that's why I had to get up. No.
Hopefully building a bridge of understanding. Let's see what happens.
Black people cannot truly be themselves in the corporate world.
That's absolutely right. Like, come on. Seriously?
Yeah.
As soon as you walk through the door, like, your hair, what do you think about when you're getting ready to go into corporate world? What's my hair gonna look like? Can I wear braids? Can I do this? I need to talk a certain way. Like, I've had people in the corporate world, because I used to work in Liverpool Street in a private bank, tell me, oh, it's just the way that you phrase things, Vicky. I'm like, okay, I will work on my elocution outside of this, but right now I'm talking how I've been brought up talking, and loads of people understand me, so I don't need you to come and patronise me, essentially. So yeah, we can't be ourselves. We have to kind of...
Do you know, I think I would add on to the end of that question, because the reason I was talking about whether to get up or not is you can be yourself, but obviously there are consequences of that. Do you know what I mean? And it's, can you be yourself and, you know, feel like there's not going to be any repercussions, you know, you're not going to be spoken down to or looked at differently. And I think that's where the issue comes into it. I mean, like, personally, obviously I work in law, so my thing is like trying to bring my real self to work all the time, and I try and tell people about what I do outside, and I let them follow me on Instagram so they can see like what I do on a day-to-day, and I really try and make it a thing to be myself, but I know that's kind of like a privilege because of the particular firm that I work at, whereas speaking to other people about their experiences, I know that where they are, they could never do that. Like, they have to shield that side of themselves, they have to speak in a particular way, otherwise they will just face the consequences of that, which is being looked at differently. So I guess I do kind of agree with that statement, and I don't think that we are at a space in the corporate world, at least, where people feel comfortable to do that without any kind of... like,
why is
backlash.
that? I know that sounds like such a simple question, but like the question, obviously, or the statement rather, was black people can't be ourselves. Let's even define that. What is it to be black, in a sense, and being ourselves that we even want to bring to work?
This is so hard, because I'm with Nikki. I was actually torn between getting up and not. Only because I think that in each company I've been in, and I've been in a lot of companies, a lot of temp, permanent, contract, etc. I've been myself, and in each situation, I found myself in uncomfortable scenarios. So not necessarily extremely bad experiences in all of them, but in one way or another, whether it be our culture, the way we speak, how our experiences, certain prejudgments against us from our counterparts. I just think there's just something about different cultures and different experiences, different upbringings, different perceptions that sometimes can affect a black person in a corporate world that is predominantly white or predominantly not anything, but just something that is predominantly not you. When you're different in that environment, there's going to be some sort of clash. Whether it is from the other person and how they perceive you, or even how you might perceive them, how defensive you might become towards them in that environment, you know? Because we are definitely taught to fight, we are definitely taught to work hard, extremely hard, more than a white person, and that's been instilled in us from a very young age, so that our attitude going into the corporate world in itself might be quite negative.
Already.
I've not necessarily liked the corporate space. I don't really care about it. I don't really like being professional. I don't believe in any form of professionalism, period. But that's because of the type of person I am. Some black people like that level, and I think we just need to be aware that we're all different. Like, there's different black people, there's different levels of what we like, and it depends on the industry.
I feel like, listening to you speak, I feel like personally, I've been socially conditioned. I'm very cynical when it comes to the corporate world. Similar to you, I've done it. I've worked in Central, Blackfriars, the whole 9 yards. And what I found is the corporate world is actually very toxic, very, very toxic. If you really, really think about it, it's very toxic. There's loads of passive aggressiveness going on. So my blackness, in terms of me trying to be myself at work, wasn't even my main issue, wasn't even my main fight every day coming to the corporate world. It was just the toxicity of it and all of that. But in terms of me trying to maintain who I am, but also the status quo, still use my white voice and, you know we all got one. You know all that white voice that you do when you're speaking to, we all got it, you know, and it's so sad how instinctively it comes as well. I actually think it's quite sad how instinctively we put it on, we don't even know. You know, someone from British Gas calls the house phone, straight away I've put that voice on. And I think for me, going back to what you said about the consequences, I kind of got to that point where I was just like, yeah, I'm going to be myself. I'm just going to be myself. It's tiring. Like, going back to what you're saying, like, I'm already tired from the commute already. And, do you know what I mean? If I even get there, like, and I'm now in work and, like, I've got to, like, almost dumb myself down a bit or just literally reduce who I am. And I got bored of that. I got bored of doing that. There's only so long you can do that for, you know, without literally compromising who you are. And I got to that point where I was like, yeah, cool, I'm ready for the consequences. And I wouldn't say it's a direct cause and effect, but after I sort of subconsciously made that decision that, yeah, I'm just going to be myself, I think I worked there for, maybe like a month or two shortly after. So that's to tell you that, like, look what the consequence was. Yes, it wasn't direct and, you know, cause and effect, but yeah, I got fired shortly after.
I think what you said about professionalism is quite interesting, that you hating professionalism, because what is professionalism? Like, to me, I like to allow my work to speak for itself so that I can act the way that I probably should have got up, but I didn't for similar reasons to you two, because I'm very comfortable being how I am at work. I mean, I don't really let them see my Instagram stories, but that's just, I just don't really want to have the conversation. Like, oh, I saw what you did on the weekend, but that's irrelevant. Point is, I think being professional is being good at your job, and anyone else that adds another definition of professionalism, like, that's their own personal problem. So I don't think you really hate being professional. I think you probably hate what they think professionalism is.
I probably hate what the
expectation
the mainstream definition of professionalism is. I completely agree.
I agree with that, and I think that, like, the way people talk about professionalism, it's like it's in direct conflict with being black in the workplace. Somebody mentioned hairstyles, I can't remember who it was, but you know, that whole debate about whether like typical black hairstyles can be seen as professional, and often it's, you know, like having your hair down technically as a black person looks different from how
I wasn't allowed braids in the workplace that I worked at like 6 years ago, so I wasn't allowed this hair.
To have braids,
I think what's interesting for me, sorry to cut you, I think, and just listening and taking in what everyone said, my and I agree with the statement completely, but what's interesting to me is that there was no preparation from the elders or those around me about that environment, because it's nothing new. We are a minority in this country, and, you know, when we're going into these, you know, corporate organisations, we are always going to be the minority. Yet no one had a conversation with me about what that meant and how I was meant to navigate and conduct myself accordingly in those rooms. So, you know, in that space, it was just like, wow, what is this? And then not knowing how to articulate that. And then I think it's that pressure of, well, now let me find a white voice all of a sudden. Do you know what I mean? And then it's like, well, what is that even? And not realising that that is now a thing. And then I think the one conversation I had with my mum about it, I come home one day and decided I wanted dreadlocks. And it's like, no, you can't do that. And I was like, but why? And that's when I realised, OK, there's something here, but didn't know or have the words to have that conversation with her, to be able to say, OK, well, you know, let's have a discussion around that. And I think for me, the conflicts and the challenges, because I had to step out of the corporate world because I just did not fit in. But didn't understand why. I was just, you know, it's just...
so crazy that we have to go through that. When I hear it, it's triggering. It's very emotional to think that someone could ever feel out of place for being themselves. And it makes me remember, there was a post about it, about how we are as black people at home. So, you know, we wear bonnets, we wear headscarves to preserve our hair, we have protection hairstyles, etc. So during lockdown and all of that, I don't have time to be showing my dry hair. That's, you know what I mean? I'm going to cover it, isn't it? Yeah. But it's almost like you think twice before even thinking about, how do I need to put my hair, like, to be on Zoom or to portray myself, like, will I be seen as unprofessional or like I'm not conducting myself well in front of external clients, etc., if I do cover my hair in this way? Like, do I have to wear a wig with Eurocentric hair? Do you know what I mean? And it's just so crazy. And I just got so angry, and I wore that bonnet for everybody. I wore it for everybody to see because I was tired. I was sick and tired of being sick and tired. I said they're going to take me as I am today.
I remember one time I forgot to put my wig on when I when I joined the work call, and I was like, oh, sorry, I'm just putting on my wig. And she was like, huh? And I was like, oh. You know what a wig is? Like, I had one colour 1 week, the next, like, what did you think happened?
My mum had a short wig with plaits, and then the next week there was like long. And they were like, oh, it grew. She said, yeah, it grew. Don't ask me a stupid question, I'm going to give you a stupid answer. Yeah, it grew.
Yeah. But where does it stop, though? Because we've all, this is something that, you know, people, you know, older than us have experienced for years and years and years, but where does it stop? Because we now act and manoeuvre differently to ensure that it's not a thing or it's not a topic of conversation. Yeah. But actually, we have to have that conversation, wear our bonnets to the meeting, to normalise it if our children's children now don't have to go through that.
I think it's changing, though, because linked into what you just said, like, speaking to you guys has made me realise that sometimes the things that I do at work, the way that I act, like I said before, I know it's based on a certain kind of privilege because of the people that I work with, they're really cool, whatever. I'm trying to show people that you can actually kind of be yourself at work and you can still be successful, you can still be okay. Like, especially when I talk to more junior lawyers, I make a point of telling them what I do at work, how I am with my colleagues, what I do outside, so that they can be like, oh, if I wanted to do that, that would be okay. Like, you know, they're always like, oh, you know, are your work people okay with you having a job outside of work? So I do artist management outside of my main job. I'm like, yeah, like, they're cool with it. I told my boss, he asked me about how it goes, that kind of thing. Like, I try and let people know, like, this is who I am at work and I'm actually doing quite well, so that they can see, all right, it can be done. Do you know what I mean? And I think it's only from speaking to you guys that I realise why I am doing that and why I make it such a big thing to be open about that.
I like that.
I could hide, I could have, you know, the private profile, and I don't want my colleagues to see me, I don't want them to know what goes on, but it's like I want to normalise that for them as well as for people who are like behind.
I'm like you, because I share my whole, of course it's a different space, I work in the music industry, so of course we're very creative, very outlandish anyway, but I'm so blessed to have such a nice immediate team. Like, my boss is so supportive, so encouraging, so fun. So the things that I kind of would display on socials, I don't feel like, oh, someone's going to come back and ask me on a Monday morning what's going on. Does that make sense? So, yeah.
And also, like, professionalism, it can still be you, do you know what I mean? Because when we speak to people, it's like, oh, you know, can I be professional and still do this? It's like, you're not being wild, you're not being crazy, you're not out here, you know, embarrassing yourself, your family, your job sort of thing. You're actually just doing what you find fun. And as long as you're, you know, keeping within the bounds of what is just seen as normal in society, there's no reason why you should have to hide that, do you know what I mean? So it's that sort of thing. There shouldn't be a reason to have to hide it, which I see why people do, but I guess the point is to show people that you don't always have to.
To answer your question as well, I feel like there's two ways. So there is being unapologetically you at your workplace to kind of make them normalise who you are. But then there's also the element of us having our own companies, because at the end of the day, they are their cultures. They've started this business and that's their culture. So we can't say to them, how dare you not be who you are? Do you know what I mean? Whereas if you are in a black business, you can be yourself. You can wear your afro and I'm not going to blink an eye because, listen, sis, I've got an afro too. And at the same time, I can make way. So, for example, with my business, I can speak to other corporates and be like, okay, you need more black businesses in your store. And that way, I've got buyers telling me, oh, how many more black businesses can we have? So we're pushing more black people to the forefront. And when other people come in, you know, we can hire white people. They are adopting our culture, essentially. So it's like, we can do that as well, but I think there's more ways to be, to kind of fight it. We have essentially been born into a country that is
the minority.
Exactly. So
it's not our motherland, is it?
It's not.
So we're always going to fight that, as you said. We need to find a way. We need to be strategic, as you said, finding ways that through more education, more black businesses and more setups, they can be more accustomed to our culture and we can be more accustomed to theirs, because we have traditionally learned how to become accustomed to theirs. So it just needs a bit of the same energy, the other way, basically.
Yeah, no, I hear the point, and I hear the point about, you know, they've created this culture so we can't really go in and change it, but I don't think any culture should be based on something that's toxic. So I think that if you have a black, if you have a black business and it's like majoritively black owned and a white person comes in, I don't think they should feel like they can't be themselves. I don't think that culture has to be like
They might, though.
racialized in that sense. They may feel like that, but I don't think the answer is kind of, I think we do need more black businesses. I think we do need more black-owned stuff, but I don't think it should be created in a way that like shields other cultures out in the same way that I don't think that we should accept like toxic workplace culture that shields us out. Like some of the things are like really problematic, and so I think, like has been said, like having the conversations and creating our own networks like within those cultures as well, I think is important.
When I was in the corporate space, I feel like it was just things like I don't want to go to after work drinks, but that's just the culture. So you just do it, you know.
That again.
Just like, oh, do you want to go to the pub? No, I don't. But
It's not your
I know
culture,
that
it's
it's
not
going to
your
help
everyday-
me. Do you know what I mean? It's not my culture, and that's not them being toxic. It's just the way that they are, you know. So it's just like I can't just be like, oh, guys, do you want to go? I don't know. Do you want to? Whatever I decide to do, because so I can't essentially be myself. But they're not. Well, I didn't find it to be toxic. But I just found I couldn't be myself.
It all boils down to how somebody reacts to things like that, though, because I'm quite like, I'll go with you.
Yeah.
I think it just depends on people just need to be open to embracing whatever your norm is.
Yeah.
And I think that it just historically, we may have experienced situations where, as a black person, we may have felt like, what we're saying is taken more offensively than, no, actually, this is just how I'd like to be. So I think it's just everyone understanding people just have different preferences, and it's not because of any sort of, whether it's the colour of their skin or their gender, etc. Just respect what somebody wants to do.
For the most part, I did find them to be as nice as they could be. If I wear braids, they're like, oh my gosh, I've seen them before. Thanks.
To get like, what am I supposed to say? Thank you. You leave it there.